Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Zakaria, Associate Director of Alumni Relations at the University of San Diego. I'm excited to have you join us today for our Young Alumni Network webinar, Financial Management for Young Professionals. The USD Young Alumni Network is an official affinity group of the USD Alumni Association, dedicated to providing the professional development and social networking opportunities for USD alumni who graduated within the last 10 years and are under 35 years old. First, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this afternoon. Before we begin, please be mindful that today's webinar is being recorded. Access to the replay of the webinar will be found on the USD Alumni website and the University of San Diego YouTube channel. So if you need to step away from the webinar and are interested in viewing it at a later time, the archived broadcast will be posted soon. On your screen is a control panel with a chat area where you are able to ask questions. Questions are very welcomed, and Annalisa Barrett is looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So please submit your questions and we will answer as many as time allows. If you experience technical difficulties, please submit concerns via the chat area. In the event that we all experience technical difficulties during today's webinar, we will attempt to resolve the issue as soon as possible. If we are unable to do so, we will reschedule the session and an email with the new date and time will be sent to you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Annalisa Barrett is currently a full-time faculty member at the University of San Diego School of Business Administration. She teaches courses in finance to undergraduate students, including financial management, financial statement analysis, and personal finance. She also teaches corporate governance to MBA students. In addition, Ms. Barrett is the faculty advisor to the USD Student Finance Association and the USD Financial Planning Association. Welcome, Annalisa. We now turn the time over to you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I'm so looking forward to having a talk with those young alumni that are listening and listening in the future as it's recorded. This is a fun topic, a topic I teach to undergrad business school students, and something that I think is important for anybody, no matter what stage of life you're in. So I think you all can see the slides on the screen, so hopefully those are clear for you. But basically I wanted to go through just 3 topics today in the time that we have. The first thing is talking about budgeting. Something that we all kind of hear about, but not necessarily take to heart and put into place. So that's the first topic. The next topic is choosing a financial planner, how to incorporate professional advice into your financial plan and into your daily life. And then the next one is talking about your elderly loved ones and how to discuss money issues with them and how to make sure that you know what their plans are for their money after they have passed away, and also to make sure that you have plans put in place that are appropriate for you as you move on into the next stages of your life. So I understand that the Young Alumni Group is people under 35, so everyone listening is probably around that age frame, or at least within 10 years of graduation. So, so you're in a very exciting stage of your life where your careers are starting, and you're starting to understand what it means to have an income and how to manage all of your expenses on your own if you weren't already doing that during your college years. So the first thing to think about is, why would you need a budget? Why is budgeting important? And this is true. This is good to know, again, for people who are business school majors, but also anyone, from any of the disciplines at the university. Everyone can benefit from implementing a little bit of finance into their lives. So, so reasons for needing a budget. The first, overarching goal, I think, that is important to think about is that you want to make sure that you are spending your money in a way that reflects your life goals and your values and your priorities. And this is something that USD focuses on quite a bit, making sure that our graduates are entering the world ready to make positive change in the world. And without implementing a budget in your own life, that's a challenge to do. So, so making sure that your budget actually implements what you are hoping to do with your life. And that starts with some very basic steps. We all know that businesses and other organizations that we work for and participate in have budgets so that they can keep track of how their spending is matching with their strategy and to make best uses of the resources that they have available to them. So, us as people, individuals, and families also need budgets for the same reason. So my first poll question is related to whether or not you have prepared a family budget. So let's just see from the group that we have on the phone how many people have a budget either for you individually or for your family, depending on your current life situation. Okay. So Sarah, is there a way to know how many people have voted or when we're done receiving the votes? Okay, well, it looks like we have most people who are polled say no, they don't have a personal or family budget. A few people on the line do, so that's great. 33% of the people that were polled today have a personal budget, and 66% do not. So, and that is very much in line with, actually even a little bit better than kind of the general population. For the vast majority of families and individuals operate without really working from a budget. And so let's talk about, for those of you who don't have a budget in place, or maybe even those of you who do, how successful, you might look at how successful that budgeting process is for you. Let's look at the next slide to think about how to go about starting to create a budget. A lot of the reasons that we hear people don't have a budget in place is because they just don't know where to begin. Money is very overwhelming, a very sensitive topic for some people to discuss with their other family members. And so having a budget that, having a plan to put a budget in place is sometimes something that is on your to-do list. You have great intentions to do that, but something that gets set aside when things, are busy or you don't have how we'll have that as a top priority. So hopefully one thing that you'll walk away with from this webinar today is just adding that to the very top priority category of your to-do list. And it can be, you can start with a very simple process. And this is what I actually have my undergrad students do in the personal finance class that I teach, is we take 1 month and you track your spending for that month. And so the goal here is to really get a clear understanding of where your money is going. A lot of people, surprisingly, really don't keep track of or know where every dollar that they make goes. And so by keeping track for a short period of time, 1 month, you can really get a good feel for where all that money is going, and it might surprise you. There are many tools available to help you with this. If you search for apps on your phone, actually, there are a lot of great apps that you can find for keeping track of your daily expenses. Many of them sync with your bank account. Mint.com is one that comes to mind that a lot of my students like to use. It will sync with all of your bank accounts and payment processes for other bills that you pay throughout outside of your bank account as well. Or you can just go the traditional method and write down either on paper or in the notes in your phone, which you always have with you, write down the expenses that you have. So the trick here is to make sure you take into account not only expenses that are big, that are bills that you're paying or that type of thing that may go on a credit card, but also all of those cash expenditures that you may not really think about. You know, how many times have you gone to your wallet and thought, wait a second, I thought I had $40, you know, from the ATM yesterday. Where did I spend it all? So keeping track of all those cash expenditures is something that you want to get used to as well. And so doing that for a month will really help you keep track of where all that money goes, whether it's tips that you're giving to people, depending on where you live in the country or what country you live in, you might be paying for public transportation with cash or that type of thing, or, you know, $2 that you give to the people who are soliciting donations outside of the grocery store, that type of thing as well, making sure that you keep track, for that 1 month, keep track of everything that you spent. Another good thing to do is to look at your credit card statements and link that up with your process as well, because that's one of the ways that that students and people have found to be really helpful, is to use that credit card statement. Well, first of all, to use one credit card, you know, predominantly, so that you can look at one statement and see what expenses are charged for that month, and then supplement that with your additional bills that you pay through bill pay or by writing a check, as well as adding in your cash expenditures. So once you have all of those expenses, you can enter them into a spreadsheet, or some of these apps and tools available to you do that for you. And you can look at those expenses and create and categorize them. But the key here is that you want to categorize them based on categories that are helpful for you. So, you know, creating categories that are applicable for your current life situation. But, you know, the major categories always are going to be housing and food and clothing and transportation, and that type of thing, as well as any type of, you know, entertainment that you might have. But you might find that during certain stages in your life, you have miscellaneous categories that need to be added to your category list. And so don't hesitate to make that category list flexible for you. Some of the apps will give you an automatic categorization, but again, add to that and supplement it with the categories that are helpful for you to look at. And if you end up with an other category or a miscellaneous category that is larger than the rest of your categories, then that is a hint that you need to give some more detail to, or look at what's contributing to that miscellaneous category. Entertainment is always one that is probably bigger than you think it is. And so one of the biggest surprises my students often have after doing this exercise for a month is to see how much they end up spending eating out, either, you know, meals out or bars, etc. That's always a big surprise for students. My guess is for young professionals that might be the case. Another big surprise, just thinking back to you know, when I was in your stage of my career, I know I ended up spending a lot more on transportation and you know, dry cleaning and clothing related to my professional life that wasn't part of my budget or thought process before starting work. So some of those things are things to think about as well. How much are you spending there? And then the other thing that you want to do, so do that for 1 month and just get a feel for where your expenses, where your money is going on a monthly basis. Again, you might have some surprises. You might find that you're spending a lot more on one category than you thought you were, and that's something to take note of. And then another thing to do is to add in those expenses that that don't occur on a regular basis. So if you're a homeowner, property taxes is one of those. You might want to add in an allocation for expenses for vacations that you're planning, or educational goals that you might have for future degrees and that type of thing. And then the simple process of creating the budget is based on those expenses, those categories that you have developed, and putting together kind of a synopsis of what you see over that time frame that you've studied, and projecting forward what you think is reasonable based on your spending habits, as well as aspirational based on where you want to be spending your money. So if you do that for a few months, you can see some patterns and some outliers, and then draw your budget conclusions from there. As opposed to, I think a lot of people have a lot of people hesitate to start a budget because they are sitting down with a blank piece of paper and saying, okay, how much do I want to spend on this? How much do I want to spend on that? And that is a very overwhelming process. Whereas if you start with a current spending pattern, and then you can work with that either to increase or decrease those categories that you want to make a change to, it's an easier way to get started. So moving on to the next slide. After you have that process completed, you want to make sure, don't forget to add into your budget, your aspirational budget, what you're going to do going forward. Make sure to add in lines for savings and lines for other goals that you might have for your life. So again, you want to, one of the, kind of key rules in financial planning and budgeting is making sure to pay yourself first, making sure that you're always setting aside money for savings. U.S. consumers, U.S. Citizens are very low on the rankings in terms of how much they save, and that is very worrisome. We tend to use more credit than we do accumulating savings. So making sure that you build that into your budget, actually having a line item on your budget for savings is important. And there's different types of savings, and a few are listed here. One is certainly for an emergency fund. You want to have an emergency fund that will accommodate 3 to 6 months of your living expenses available to you in liquid cash. So you want to make sure that this is something that's not tied up in stock investments or a CD that has a penalty for withdrawing that money from the CD early. You want to make sure that you have a 3 to 6 month cushion that's available to you for your living expenses, so that you can cover any living expenses that you might have if anything happens to you, whether that be the loss of a job or an injury or an illness or a personal decision to not work or choose to not be earning the income that you have right now. So an emergency fund is important. Make sure that you have a line item in your budget for an emergency fund. Retirement is obviously another major category for savings, and you're not too young to start thinking about this. One of the important things for young professionals to realize is that the earlier you start investing in your retirement accounts and opportunities provided to you for retirement savings, the better. It may seem that it's so far away that it's something you don't need to worry about right now, but it is something that you definitely want to take advantage of, the opportunities given to you for retirement funding. So first, you want to assess that, and we're not going to go through a whole assessment of retirement planning. That could be a topic of whole another hour. But first, you want to make sure you know what retirement plan is available to you from your employer. So your employer most likely is offering you some sort of employment-related retirement plan. But you want to make sure you know if that's the case. Make sure you're taking advantage of it to the full extent that is available to you, and also make sure you understand how it works. And so making sure that you talk to your human resources and benefits professional at your employer so that you understand exactly how you can take the best advantage of your retirement plan. And you make sure you understand how it will pay out, make sure that you don't do anything to violate the way that it's set up or withdraw anything early from that. And then the secondary thing is, depending on how much you have provided to you by your employer, making sure to supplement that with personal retirement. I see Brandon has a question. How much of a yearly income would you recommend to put towards retirement savings? how would you recommend to break down that savings among savings and the savings goals you outlined? So this is a really good question. How much of your income do you want to be putting towards savings? One thing that is going to depend on is your other expenses that you have. But if you are a young professional and you don't have housing expenses and children that you're supporting, then the higher that percentage would be. I hesitate to give a specific number. That's something that you can work with a financial planner to work on in terms of what's best for your current situation. But definitely you want to make sure that in the years where you are not yet, supporting a family and or supporting a business, personal business, you want to make sure to have a higher proportion of your income allocated to retirement savings so that you have that flexibility later in your career to cut back if you need that money for the other obligations that you have. Another savings line item that you want to think about, again, depending on your life situation, is college education for your children. As you all know, being recent graduates of USD, college is a very rewarding process, but a very expensive process as well. And so having that opportunity be available for your children, if that's a goal that you have for you and your family, then you want to make sure that you're setting aside money for that purpose. And again, you would work with a financial planner specifically to calculate the ages of your children, the types of schools you're looking at, what other assistance might be available to you, and how to go about making a plan for what you need to set aside now, depending on the ages of your children, etc. And other goals you want to think about, again, this is getting back to that original, thought that you want to make sure your spending habits allow you to support those things that are important to you and your goals and your values. First, if your goal is to start a business, then you want to make sure to allocate a portion of your savings to a savings account or some other sort of instrument to save capital to start that business. Similarly, down payment for a home is quite often a common savings goal for young professionals. And again, with the changes in our economy over the past, decade, you'll definitely you don't want to rely on the opportunity for a very low down payment mortgage. You'll want to definitely plan for having a significant portion of the mortgage to put down as a down payment. Vacation is obviously another great way to allocate your money, and charitable giving as well. If charitable giving is important to you, you want to make sure to set aside money in an account available to you to do that as you see fit, as you wish. Another one I didn't put on here but might be most applicable to this age group is paying off your student loans as well. You might want to allocate a portion of your savings to that as well before you move on to making other financial decisions. So I mentioned a few times and kind of referred to the fact that you'll want to work with a financial planner for the specific numbers related to your situation. Many people, I think, feel that they don't need a financial planner, or they hesitate to reach out to a professional in the field. So the first topic on this slide 6 just addresses some of the reasons that you might find that you may need a financial planner. So the first issue is, you may not have the expertise in order to make the decisions that you need to make, especially as it comes to retirement planning, estate planning, and things like that. And even if you have the expertise, you might not have the time, especially as a young professional. You may not have the time to spend to sit down and monitor your expenses and rebalance your portfolio and and reassess your financial situation on a quarterly or annual basis. There is time that is required, and that's something that may be not available to you at this stage in your life. Or you might not want to do it. You might not have the desire to do it, and that makes sense as well. So in that case, a financial planner might be a good option for you. Another thing to think about is you might benefit from, objective opinions. A lot of times, financial decisions are very emotional, especially when you're working with a family. You might have differences of opinion among family members. So having an objective third party participate in the planning process is something that is often very helpful for people. And you might also need someone, I know this is something that I definitely need, someone to help stay focused and stay on plan. So if you have, a financial planner monitoring your financial plan over time, then they can kind of let you know, hey, this is the stage in your life when you might want to change this portion or that portion of your plan. And having someone there to kind of keep you on track and have it be their responsibility to keep your financial plan on track is very helpful as well. So if you do decide that a financial planner is the right path for you, then how do you find the right financial planner? And, acknowledging that financial planning is a very personal relationship. You end up talking to this person about a lot of very personal issues related to, family dynamics, related to health issues quite often, again, related to personal goals and values and aspirations. And so you want to make sure you're working with someone that you trust and that you enjoy spending time with, that you're comfortable talking to and sharing those ideas with. So you want to make sure that the person you're using is a certified financial planner, similar to CPA or other professions. There's a certification process that financial planners go through that requires testing on all aspects of financial planning in addition to ethics testing and continued education. So you want to make sure that your financial planner is certified. And I provide here a good resource from the Financial Planning Association, plannersearch.org, that allows you to search for planners in your area. Another good tip that I've heard several people mention is to interview a few financial planners before you decide on the person you're going to choose to hire. A financial planner should provide you an interview or a getting to know you session for free. So that's something that you can set up as an opportunity to get to know them and just find out, talk about their background, talk about their certification, and then also get a feel for your level of comfort with them. So the next poll question I have is, if you use a financial planner, how is that financial planner paid? What is their compensation structure? So I'll let people answer that one. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like we have a good portion of the people participating who have answered, and it looks like most of you do not use a financial planner, which again is not uncommon for young professionals. And those of you who do use a financial planner, that person is paid by a commission. And again, this is very common. Historically, the field of financial planning has been populated with professionals who are paid a commission for the products that they provide to you as part of their financial planning process. And that is an approach that many people are comfortable with. An alternative approach is to find a financial planner that is paid on a flat rate or an hourly basis, so a fee-based financial planner. And this business model allows for that person to not have a tie to any particular financial services company or any particular products that they're focused on transferring to their clients. And so many people find that there's less of a conflict of interest there, and that using a financial planner that is fee-based allows for a more personalized process. Sometimes that fee is based on a flat rate for the year for a comprehensive financial plan. Sometimes that fee is based on an hourly rate, depending on how much time you end up spending with that financial planner, or some combination thereof. And so that's something for you to explore, but on the Planner Search website, you can find out which is best, the best model for you, and then make that decision. And another thing just to mention is that I was actually talking with my finance students about this in our summer school class this morning, that, you know, it seems that there is a gap in the market. There's not a lot of financial planners that are focusing on the young professional market. So, so if you're interested in a new career opportunity, that might be a good opportunity to pursue. You know, and so we could talk about that offline if that's something that you're interested in, because it does seem that a lot of my students, as they graduate or shortly thereafter, contact me for suggestions for you know, firms or financial planners that tailor to young professionals. And so it sounds like, just from the responses we have here, that's something that is true with this group as well. Again, you know, you might not yet be at the stage where you feel like you need a financial planner, but when you're ready to make that switch, then know that there are resources available to you that are listed here. Okay, so the last topic that we have scheduled for today is talking about your elderly loved ones and money. So in general, this is your parents, right? But it may very well be grandparents or other caregivers, aunts and uncles, other people who raised you or support you, or who you love and want to help through this process. But the concept is very important, and it's something that is very hard even for people in the profession to talk about and to execute appropriately. So, so my first poll question here is, we'll just start off with, what best describes your planning with regards to your family's estate? Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. So most of you have at least been exposed to this idea and know what an estate is, or what I'm referring to when I talk about estate planning. But just in case anyone is listening to the recording and didn't vote here, an estate just refers to what you own at the time of your death. And there are many, many implications for the assets that you have in your ownership at the time of death. And so understanding what options are available to you for estate planning is important, and that's, again, a topic for another entire hour-long session, or a whole master's degree, actually. But just what you need to know for now is to make sure that you have the information you need to not be taken by surprise if something should happen to your loved ones. And so so the first thing it looks like many people on the call have done is to understand what their parents or elderly loved ones, their plan is. And so we'll talk about kind of what types of plans and discussions are important. But it's good to start at a young age and make sure that you know what's going on and what your parents' wishes are before you get into a situation where they can't share that information with you. So, so the first thing to do, how do you start the conversation? And many of you, it sounds like you have, so that's great. That's great news. Maybe a few of you could write in on the chat function and let us know kind of how the conversation came up or how you started to learn about your parents' estate plans, and I can talk about those. But in general, if you haven't done that or if you want to revisit the idea, having a conversation first about what types of lifestyle issues and health planning issues your parents might be having is important, rather than just jumping into the conversation by saying, okay, so how much do I get when you die? That's not the kind of conversation you want to be having, and that probably won't be conducive to meaningful discussion. So having discussion about what type of retirement plans your parents might have, or what types of goals they have for their life after they are in the advanced stages of their life is important. And then finding out what their plans are for their estate after they have passed away. Again, a difficult subject to talk about, of course, but important to do. And so you have questions that you want to have answered, and it's a good idea to prepare them in advance because this is an emotional topic, and quite often, the topic gets, the discussion gets off topic. So making sure you have a list of questions and you get those topics addressed. Maybe it's a series of conversations that you have. But you want to know if there's a will. You want to know if your loved ones have a will in place. You want to know if they have a funeral plan. What do they want to have happen to celebrate their life? This differs by individual dramatically, and so it's very helpful to know what plans people have or what ideas people have for what should happen at their life celebration. You also want to, one of the challenges is knowing where all the documents are, and we'll talk about some of those important documents in the next slide, but understanding where all those important documents are is very important. You want to be able to put your hands on all of the documents that you need in order to be able to help your family members, whether it's after they've passed away, or also you want to think about what will happen if your parents become ill and can no longer pay their bills on their own and get their medicine on their own and that type of thing. So the next two bullets, how your household expenses are paid, how are regular bills paid. Many of us, in the younger generation have automatic bill pay set up and things like that, but many in the older generation still use their checkbook to pay bills, and if they're in the hospital or otherwise, not able to make those payments, will the electricity be turned off, or will other things fall through the cracks? So making sure that's all understood by everyone involved. And medicine, medications, what types of other things need to be taken care of? Are they do they have are they the landlords of a rental property that you weren't aware of that may need assistance while they are in the hospital or otherwise indisposed? And then you want to have contact information for everyone that you might need if your parents are not available. So again, this is a little kind of binder that you might want to put together and have handy, a couple copies maybe. It's sensitive information, so you don't want it lying around, where it can be taken. It might be in a lockbox somewhere, safety deposit box, etc., but somewhere that's available. Safety deposit box is another good example. You want to make sure you know what your parents might have in safety deposit boxes, where those keys are, so that you can have access to that those items when they're not available, when your parents are not available. So again, here on the next slide, slide 8, we have just a basic list of those types of documents and accounts that you would want to have information about. You want to know where they have bank accounts and where they have investment accounts. Again, real estate, you want to know where their mortgage statements are, what insurance policies they have, life insurance and otherwise. Again, one good way to do this is to ask your parents or elderly loved ones to write what's called a letter of last instructions, which is not a legal document, but it does give you the details, or it can include anything that the author wants to include in it, but it can include the details regarding all this information. In addition to, the letter of last instructions is also a very helpful way to ask your loved one to tell you how they want their funeral to transpire. You know, first of all, burial preferences. Do they want to be cremated? Do they not want to be cremated? Where do they want to be buried or interred? What type of ceremony do they envision? Who to contact? This is often a very hard thing to think about, but you might not know all the people that your parents or loved ones might want to contact after their death. So a letter of last instructions is a good tool to use. Again, it's not a legally binding document, but it's a letter to you or all of your siblings or the lawyer, everyone concerned, about what they hope to have happen after they're gone. The next page, the last slide here, has a list of the estate planning tools that are legally binding documents. So again, the letter of last instructions, as I mentioned, is a useful tool, but not necessarily a legally binding document. So I have a description here of the basic documents for an estate plan. You include a will. And certainly, you know, we've all heard of wills. They're featured quite predominantly in lots of movie mysteries and murder mysteries and that type of thing. But a will is basically a document that that details where you want your estate's assets, those things that you own, those things that you own, where you want those to go, who you want to get your possessions and your money. And it will also name the person who will oversee the execution of your estate. The executor of your estate will be named. If you have minor children, or anyone who depends on you for a majority of their survival, if you have an elderly parent that you're supporting, or a disabled child who is not a minor after the age of 18, then the will can also designate who will be custodians, or the people to take care of those people after you are gone, who will have custody of your children after you're gone. And so that's also an important thing to designate in your will. If you don't have a will, you die intestate, then the laws of the state that you're living in determine what happens to all of your property. So that includes all of your, all of your real property, as well as your investment property, etc. So the ideal situation is to have a will that states where you want everything to go. So a lot of times we hear about and think about wills being used only for very wealthy people who have millions of dollars to transfer to their children, or you hear about it specifically for your grandmother's silver spoon collection and her diamond ring, who gets which item. But it's a comprehensive document that can be very helpful, even if there's not a lot to be transferred, especially for the reasons related to who will be the custodian of your children and who will oversee the process upon your death. And also, I don't get into it here, again, something for an attorney and a financial planner to work with you on, but in later stages of your life it might make sense to put your assets into a trust. Different types of trust are available, and so, again, don't have time or to get into the details there, but a trust is often used in conjunction with a will. A irrevocable trust or an irrevocable trust. So, again, we can talk about those offline if you're interested. A durable power of attorney is an important document to have for everyone. Who has any responsibility for making any financial decisions. So this is something that you want to have in place, as well as making sure you know if your parents or other loved ones have one in place. And this allows you to Designate someone who will perform your financial duties for you if you are not able to. So this is before you pass away, but if you are ill, in a coma, or for some other reason incapacitated, if you become mentally ill or have other challenges making financial decisions, this document transfers that right to someone. And so you want to have that in place. So again, if indeed you have the circumstance where you are not able to make financial decisions or pay your bills, someone is ready and willing and able to step in and do that. A living will is different than a will. I know it sounds very similar, but a living will specifically addresses the wishes that you have regarding medical treatments for life-sustaining sustainment. Do you want to have any and all approaches taken to sustain your life, or are there certain circumstances under which you would rather not? And that is a very difficult decision for a loved one to make if you haven't given them that guidance as to what your wishes are in that regard, when you are able to. So having a living will and having that conversation with your parents and other loved ones is important. Before it ever comes up. Quite often you have these two come up in the third, the medical durable power of attorney. Those discussions come up when you go into surgery. Quite often the hospital will ask if these are in place. So the last one, as I mentioned, a medical durable power of attorney is a document that authorizes someone else to make medical decisions. So similar to the durable power of attorney, which allows someone to make financial decisions and pay bills and execute other financial payments, etc. The medical durable power of attorney is something that authorizes someone to make medical decisions for you. So not those specifically relating to life-sustaining treatments, but other medical decisions on your behalf. So those are documents that you definitely want to have in place as you're working on your financial plan and working toward getting an estate plan ready. And you certainly want to know if your parents have those, and you definitely want to know if you have been designated as the executor or as the designee in any of these documents by your parents or any loved ones. So with that, I know I think I've gone a little bit over the time we had allotted, so I'll leave it there and open to questions if there are any.
Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to type it in the chat area. We have a few minutes available for questions right now. All right, well, we'll go ahead and close. Thank you to everyone for your participation. We would like to send a special vote of gratitude to our presenter, Annalisa Barrett. In addition, I would like to thank the Young Alumni Network's Programming Committee who planned this event. There are many ways to connect to the University of San Diego and the USD Alumni Association through social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, and YouTube. You can also connect through in-person social and networking events in your area, such as Portland Summer Barbecue on August 10th. I have a last, yep, here we go. Palo Alto Networking Happy Hour on August 14th, or the Honolulu Alumni and Family Barbecue on August 31st. There are many more. Just go to our website at alumni.sandiego.edu and click on the event calendar. No matter where you are, you're a Torero for life. Thank you again and have a great day.